Good morning for me. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Presently Aquí with Claudia. I am Claudia, your host. And Presently Aquí is a beautiful community of healers that come together to share their remarkable stories of how they overcame challenges to discover self-healing and start their path of self-love. And as always, I am always excited to introduce a new guest. And today I have Kevin Palmieri. He's a CFO, founder, and co-host. No, actually, CFO, founder, co-host, and Peak Performance podcast coach. After hitting his goal of a six-figure income, Kevin realized that there had to be more. He had the car, he had the money, and the typical American dream. It took getting it all to realize that what matters most is your thoughts. And now that's how Next Level University was born. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me, Claudia. I am very excited to chat. Happy Saturday morning. Thank you for getting up early.
Yes, of course, definitely. I was super excited to have this conversation. You're automatically, I know you're in the podcast industry, but you already have this heartwarming, welcoming energy about you. So
thank you.
I'll get up early for that kind of energy.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm very blessed to get to meet amazing people like you all the time, and I used to be so afraid of meeting strangers, and now I meet strangers every single day, so life is weird like that.
Yeah, it is weird like that, because we don't know that we're each other's teacher and gift, right, as we're encountering new people. So yes, I'm well aware. I worked in hospitality most of my life, so meeting strangers was normal. Yes. Yeah. So, per usual, we're gonna start with 3 deep breaths together to cleanse the energy and start this beautiful conversation. So the listener out there, if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. But if you are not driving, please try to close your eyes or put your eyes somewhere where they're not really paying attention to any focus. So we're gonna take a first deep breath together. And the next deep breath, I want you to notice what it's like to be in your body. And then the last breath, I want you to be with all of you, your thoughts, your body, the environment. Just be aware of it all. And then let it go on the out breath. And for the listener, if you want to take more by yourself, you can take more breaths as you're listening to us. So, yeah, right?
I feel very flowy now.
Yeah, it's. I find it. I mean, it's also helpful no matter where you are. But if I have someone who's a meditator, I'll have them do a meditation. But it's always good because I know you're already halfway in the middle of your day, so kind of like cleansing whatever happened and just kind of be here now, right? Because you're well aware, and we'll dive into that. I'm so excited. So let's get into this amazing conversation, Kevin. My love, what are some of the challenges that you faced early on to your path to self-discovery?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest thing I faced was not understanding the importance of self-discovery and understanding myself at a deep level. So I was someone who I assumed if I got a certain level of external success, I'd feel really good about my internal self, and all the external trappings of success would just fix that. It would fix the voids. It would fix the insecurities. Learning about that and getting everything and having a nice car and a lot of money and my girlfriend was a model, all those things, that, if anything, probably made understanding myself even harder because the intention wasn't to learn about me. It was to make more things to mask the stuff that I was feeling. So I would say that. I would say not necessarily being exposed to the importance of self-discovery and self-awareness, and then putting a lot of emphasis into external versus going inward is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that happening to most people, right? Because we all kind of have this programming of the external happiness and thinking that that's the fulfilling aspect that we're looking for, but really it's you, right? Yourself.
Well, even fulfillment, right? Happiness, I believe, more than anything, is an external. It's created by external results. So, if this interview goes well and Claudia likes me, I will be happy.
Right.
Regardless of how this goes, I am currently fulfilled. Because I'm in the process of doing what I love. I'm in the process of growing and contributing towards something greater than myself.
Yes.
That's all internal stuff.
Yes.
Right? So I think just the happiness, fulfillment, understanding is something I never, ever knew.
Yeah, right, and that's important. And we're gonna get into that a little bit more. At the point that you've realized, these external fulfillments versus internal fulfillments, right? What is it that inspired you? What is it that kind of clicked the button in your brain that said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not how I want to move forward with my life"?
So I worked really, really, really hard for an entire year, and my main focus and main purpose for that year was to make as much money as I could. I made $100,000 that year. I was 26. I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. I opened my final pay stub, and when I opened it, I realized that for most of my life, and especially that year, I had lived unconsciously. I was just going through the motions. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. And I remember thinking to myself, the direct opposite of unconscious, to me, is not conscious. It's hyperconscious. Right? The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. I want to be more hyperconscious. Because a lot of the pain that I'm experiencing today is based on the fact that I didn't know myself.
Right.
I didn't know what I valued as a human. I didn't know my core beliefs, my core aspirations, my core goals. I didn't know any of that. So if I knew more about myself, everything I did in life would be more aligned, technically, because it can't be aligned if you don't know what's aligned. That is when I started the podcast after that, and it was that. I want to have deep conversations with people who understand themselves, or we can help each other understand each other at a deeper level and ourselves at a deeper level. That was really the thing for me.
Wow. It's truly remarkable how most people are like, I was reaching rock bottom, and you're like, I reached high bottom. High top, right? I'm just saying, the top of right? And you're like, no, this is not how it's supposed to feel. I have the money, like you said, you have all these things, and yet why do I feel like there's a void, right? Like there's just or why am I not everything I thought I would be? Why am I not confident? Why am I still insecure? All those things. It's been a very interesting journey and understanding. I just got a new car recently. And I did a post about this. I didn't get the car so I'd feel better about myself. That's not why I got the car. I don't expect that. It's not going to fulfill me. It's not going to make me feel any better, most likely. Will I get little bouts of happiness when I drive it? Sure. Right.
But it's not going to fix insecurities. It's not going to fix anxiety. It's not going to fix depression. It's not going to fix any of that.
Right.
It's an external thing that lives in the external world. I am trying to work on the internal stuff that lives on the internal stuff, so it's been a very interesting journey, especially as somebody who I never really cared about how I thought about myself. Very
big.
It didn't matter.
Right. Because we're not going in, we're going out and thinking of all the things outside, right? And that's a big one, right? That's really big. I didn't care how I felt and what I truly needed and my needs, and to be valued and seen by my own aspect, my own self. That is a big one, big one, because I just got chills. Because most people are in that externalization, even if they didn't acquire the goals that you did externally, right? They have their own successes and their own goals, right? And I really want to highlight this to the listener, like when you're going through your day and your week and you're working and just not really thinking about you, just really sit with that, and like, where in that space of my time am I thinking like, hey, what do I need? What do I need to help me with my overwhelming emotions or the stress or the anxiety? What can I do to help ease those aspects, right? And as opposed to, finding, again, external sources. You know, if you have a headache, you're getting aspirin versus like, where is the headache coming from? Right? The root of all of our, right, of all negative things that come up and bubble up within us. That's truly impressive. So as you're going through this new awareness, how did you, or what is it that inspired you to kind of like be self-reflective, right? Because that's also something that doesn't come naturally. It's just eventually you start to have that self-awareness of like, oh, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not paying attention to that. And I don't ask myself, why do I do these things, right? So how did that come in for you?
I don't know. I've gotten that question before, and I remember consuming content that made me think just a layer below the layer that I had been thinking.
Right.
So I remember hearing something about, why do we go to a job that we hate, in a car that we can't afford, to pay for a house that we don't live in because we spend most of our time at work? And I remember thinking, the time I heard that, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. When before it was just like, that's what people do, and that's what you're supposed to do. So I don't know, something unlocked in me based on whatever content I was consuming, or maybe the people I was around, that allowed me to look at life from a different perspective, through a different lens, and just understand the possibility of that. Like the possibility of enjoying what you do more. Interesting. What would that be like? Right? That's probably the best answer I can give.
That is remarkable, because it kind of just, it is that one little aspect, right, of just like, hey, I've heard this, because that happens. Like, we've heard a quote over and over until something shifts in you, and you're like, why am I hearing it differently this time?
Yeah.
And even that's the first question. Like, why am I hearing that differently? And then the questions just keep rolling out. It just doesn't stop, as you know. It's just like, why do I do this? Why do I do that? And it can be overwhelming, because you're just nonstop inquisitive, right? Self-inquisitive. And like, okay. So for you, what were some of the beginning steps that you took into your hands to like shift the paradigm in your mind?
The first one, you just spoke to it. I would ask myself why before, after, and during any experience I could consciously do it. So one of the best things that ever happened to me was I was at the gym with my business partner and one of our friends. And in the gym, I'm very confident because I've spent a lot of time there, right? That's one of my areas where I feel good. So when we're working out together, I am very confident, I feel very secure, I feel good. We stop working out, we start talking about business. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I immediately get very insecure, and then I started to villainize in my mind my business partner and my friend. And it's like, why did my energy just shift so much? I don't understand it. So I asked myself why. Oh, I feel insecure because I feel like I'm on the outside of this conversation and I can't add value. Okay, why does that matter? Well, because I want to belong. I want to belong in the tribe. I don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. That breakthrough that I had that day was, oh, interesting. The way you feel is more a representation of you than it is the way somebody else is making you feel. Then being able to take that a layer deeper and say, okay, how do I do that in real time? And then like read the room and feel the way that you're feeling in regards to somebody else's energy. That day was a really good understanding for me, because it allowed me to do it in reflection. Then I could practice trying to do it in real time. And now I'm always kind of doing that. Like, why do I feel comfortable with you? You're very calm and your energy is very inviting. Like, this is an easy conversation. So, but that understanding is important, because now I can recognize that. And the next time I meet someone with a similar energy, I'll be able to recall this time. And to your point, it's just never ending. It goes and it goes and it goes and it goes.
Right, because the mind is a collective of the experiences that we have, positive and negative, and it just, right, because the mind is the ego, so it's just wanting to, either am I protecting, or this is familiar, okay, I know what to do here, or this isn't familiar, let's kind of, take back a little bit, and I love how that came for you. I really do, because I want to say that because most men don't really think in this aspect, and I know you're well aware of, like, why do I feel insecure when these people are talking? But when I was out at the gym, I was all full on testosterone. But here, and it takes courage, it takes bravery, I think, for you to see these aspects of yourself, so you can start understanding that you are a part of the table, or else you wouldn't be in this table, right? Invited in. It's just the thoughts and the feelings that arise from the reasons why you feel insecure, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really big, and I'm really glad that you touched on that, because I know that the collective of men out there are not in that space of, like, why do I feel insecure, right? They just want to push through that and, like, make themselves confident. Right?
Yeah, I tried for a long time. It didn't work that way for me. So I think the other interesting things, though, for me, is long before I ever wanted to be a successful podcaster or any of the things that people call me today, I wanted to be a good man. Really, like when I started this journey, that was the very beginning, is how do I improve my character as a man, as a human being. That's one of the reasons I've been willing to face a lot of the darker, more challenging truths I face, is because that's what I must do in order to become a better man, a more character-driven man, a more balanced man, whatever it is. So I just believed it would be worth it. And I still do, right? I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been, and I'm the most capable I've ever been, which is great.
Yes.
But with that comes a level of, I'm also the most balanced I've ever been, where the external world, it definitely affects me, but far less than it ever has.
Right.
Because the internal is the strongest it's ever been.
Yeah, definitely. That's powerful, because and then you're kind of sovereign, right? And you decide if you want the external world to affect you or not.
Yeah, it's weird.
Versus,
It's weird for me.
It is. Yeah, definitely. I was always in this space, so I was always like, you know what, circus, you do that over there, and I'm just gonna be over here. I never really like cared to participate or go watch it. I'm just like, because I live by feeling, right? As a woman, I just felt so connected to that aspect of me, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna follow this, and just doesn't feel right. Y'all go do that. So definitely, and I really love that so much, that you were able to get into that space. Beautiful. So as you're going along in your journey, were you inspired to do, these beautiful things that you do? Like, what was the podcasting for you, the idea? Like, what was, I know you wanted to meet people and serve in a way, and how did that idea like bubble up and become the diamond that it is today?
A couple things. One, I was already coaching people a lot on relationships, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing.
Right.
So I had the thought that I can help somebody that reaches out to me directly. How do I help more people? Because I'm not going to be able to do that all day, every day. And even if I can, it's only 8 people I'm helping. How do I do that more and more and more? Really, the initial thought around this whole thing was myself and my business partner, when we partnered up, we were both raised in households by single parents. So I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. He was raised by his mom and his sister. We didn't have any self-improvement in our lives.
Right.
And we both dealt with a pretty high level of trauma growing up. How do we become the types of humans who we'd look up to?
Yeah.
That was really the beginning for us. And then what we found is we attracted an audience primarily of women. That's when it's like, okay, this character thing, this has to be airtight. We have to work so hard on this. That's something we have to fix. Then from there, it was like, oh, we have a very unique opportunity, but we also have a very unique responsibility, where we're cultivating a primarily female listener base, where they're listening to us because we're vulnerable and we're transparent, we're authentic, but we're also heart-driven, we're also no BS. It's like this fine line of that. So once I caught wind that we were serving an audience like that, that really inspired me. That really inspired me, because I have a soft spot for, like, my mom was a single mom.
Right.
You know, my grandmother took part in raising me. I've always had a really protective soft spot around women. Just always been that way. So yeah, I wear that as kind of a badge of honor, and that's been something that's really, really made me even more passionate about serving the community that we serve. Is if I'm a good heart-driven leader and somebody feels safe being around, maybe they'll open up to me in a way they've never opened up to anybody, facilitate growth, facilitate change. It's a big win-win-win.
Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, very, very beautiful.
Thank you.
And to be honest, I have listened to a few of your episodes, and what it is, I don't know if women tell you, but again, it's feeling. I can feel welcomed. I can feel the sincerity. I can feel the authenticity. So I want to listen to more. What else do they have to say, right? And so that's because, you know, with everyone, if you have something, I'm curious, like, what is your book? What is your this? What is your, you know? But I really wanted to listen to you because you've been doing this for so long, you have that voice, right? That podcasting voice really well done. But I wanted to get a sense of what are the conversations you're having with you and your partner, and what does that feel like, right? What does that look like while I close my eyes and listen to you both? And so that's what came through, was just like, I see what's going on here. You've already tapped into that aspect. As you know, this is what I do, right? I provide the safe space so that way you feel vulnerable and safe with me to, share that first question of the challenges, right? We all have our childhood traumas and all these things that are very personal, and I want to also make sure that you feel comfortable. And so that's really big. And, you know, as a man, and you saying that, you know, for us women, as you know, most of the collective, no putting shame on there to the collective of men that are just going through the motions of life and not really standing there and saying, what kind of man do I want to be, right? What kind of integrity, character that I want to build to make people feel this way, right? Not only to make them, but it's just I'm embodying this, and this is the side effect, per se, of me loving myself. Right?
Yeah. I think it's really hard because we hear a lot of talk about vulnerability, and my thought now on vulnerability is it's not necessarily with someone else. You have to be vulnerable with yourself before you're ever capable of being vulnerable with anybody else. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of us don't work on ourselves, because sometimes it comes from I don't really like the way I showed up there, or I really wish I had showed up in a more positive light, or I said this and I wish I didn't. That's a hard mirror to look in.
Yeah.
That's a really hard mirror to look in, especially if you don't know what to do next.
Especially.
Right? So I understand now more than ever. It's like, I just think it's interesting. I think one of the benefits that I had was I had years of bodybuilding. Which allowed me to look at my body and say, it's not where it should be.
Right.
Not from a beating myself up destructive way, from a be vulnerable and say, I kind of let myself go this year. I haven't been as consistent. I know I can do better. But even that phrasing, I know I can do better. I'm capable of creating something in the future. I think that really helped me look in the mirror as a man and say, I don't really like that. And it was never really that drastic. It was never, I don't like this about myself. But it was just, I want to be more heart-driven. I want to be more inclusive. I want people to feel more safe. But I understand how challenging that can be if you say, well, I want to be more character-driven, but how do I do it? Right? It almost limits the opportunity in the beginning.
Absolutely, yes. And also when that vulnerability aspect to yourself, when you don't want to look in the mirror and say like, oh, I could have done this, because what happens is automatically we create shame monsters, right, around that. I should have been more polite, I should have been more kind, or why did I do that? And you start creating these shame monsters which uninspire you to see what is next, right? And then that's where, that's what these community of healers is, to help you deprogram these ways that we are kind of going against ourselves, and not allowing these beautiful aspects to come through that are craving to be seen and valued within ourselves. Because as we all have been in these traumatic situations growing up, that we were lacking certain things from the people around us, and also limited by what they were able to give with their knowledge, right? And now we are the adult where we can just say, you know what, I've always wanted to experience what it's like to be loved unconditionally, right? Let me start here first.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel vulnerability. Let me start here first. I want to feel whatever it is, right? And these things, like, you start doing the opposite. You're taking your external, and now you're like putting it into internally for you, and just going within. And so now that you're also a performance coach, right? How do you help people now that you've experienced all these things and come into your own body, into your own love? How do you apply that while you're helping other people?
It's interesting, because I used to think that if you just told somebody what to do, that was the answer.
Right.
Because that's a lot of the way, if you tell me what to do, I'll just go do it. I'm just consistent. That works for me. But what I realized is most people, we have to start with the identity first.
Right.
So the identity level of, who do you think you are? Right? Who are you today? What does that mean about you? So my conversation with somebody is, what is your current identity? What is your past identity? And what is the future identity that you desire to have? And then it just starts there. That's the beginning of the conversation. And we say, all right, cool. What was your old identity? And oftentimes you figure out pretty quickly that people's identities aren't who they aspire to be. It's who they've been told they are. And that's a whole nother, there's a lot of layering that comes with that. But yeah, for me, it's usually helping somebody identify who they actually are through identity work, talking a lot about limiting beliefs, talking a lot about relationships and stuff like that. And then it's from there, okay, how do we take the parts from your future identity that you desire, and how do we close the gap on that? Like, what are the things that we have to do tactically? But I do start now from a place of deeper understanding, awareness, and identity work.
Right. And so, now that you're doing that, and you decided this is what I want to do with the podcast and help people and all of this, did you have to take any classes, or were you inspired to dive deeper into your self-work? Did you get external help from others to get into that space for you a little more deeper?
Yeah, a lot of this. So no, for me it was when I really started doing this. We were hundreds and hundreds of episodes into the podcast. So after every podcast episode, my business partner and I would be talking about this stuff. Right? So I've really been talking about mindset, identity, limiting beliefs, self-worth, self-belief, relationships, all this stuff pretty much every day for the last 6 years.
Right.
And I work with my business partner, and we kind of guide each other, and we raise new awarenesses. So no, there was no formal training, but it was years of studying other people on the podcast, years of studying myself, years of having these conversations with my business partner, years of coaching. It's just a culmination of thousands and thousands of hours of those conversations, and then just connecting the dots. Like, okay, this is a common thing I've seen. Interesting. This is a common thing I've seen. Does that have anything to do with each other? Let me test that out. And just kind of doing that for long enough. Right.
You just got curious about it all.
Yep.
And just went with it, and having a great business partner as a soundboard, right?
Yep.
And having also being lucky enough to find someone who's matching your vibration at where you are and where you want to go. That's a big deal.
I'm very blessed to have such a wonderful business partner, and we see each other every single day, so this would not work very well if we didn't like each other.
Absolutely. And you're helping each other grow. It's very beautiful having that relationship, and through the years and the episodes and the conversations, and I'm sure there were, as anything else, ups and downs.
Of course.
And you get stronger and stronger the more downs you get, and the more you get up. And having that support is a big deal. It's
for sure.
Really beautiful.
It's everything.
Wow. It is everything. And now that you brought up the topic, what is something that do people commonly do come for you for? Like, what is their advice? Like, hey, I'm stuck with this. What is the common ask?
Yeah, usually I tend to work with people who have low self-belief and low self-worth. Just based on the fact that I am not somebody who expected to be where I am today. I didn't believe any of this was possible. So I understand not a lot of people resonate with some of the advice you hear, right, where it's like, just believe in yourself more. Thank you. I know. That's great. I understand what you're saying. If only it was that easy, I would do it. Or you have to value your worth. I know. I understand. Right. But that's not a layer deep enough for me to actually use. So I tend to work with people who have a ton of limiting beliefs. They have low self-belief and low self-worth. And the ask is usually, I want more out of life, but I don't believe I deserve it and or can do it. That's usually, because I've been very open about that in my journey, where I don't have a ton of self-belief. I do now. I have more than I ever have, but I don't come from that place naturally. Right. And the self-worth thing has been a huge construction project for my entire life. So those are two things that I don't naturally have that I had to build. So I believe I can help other people build it as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Self-worth. I'm sure there's a lot of people who listen to you, to my podcast, or anywhere about self-worth. They're like, yes. Because even me personally, like, you know, as a healer or teaching mindfulness, you know, even you as you're going through your podcast and being a coach, we're still learning, right? We're still like, oh, I see where I still am feeling like I'm not worthy of this space or being here or being this with this person or doing the work that I do, right? There are these little things. Does that appear for you, like these little bubbles of that you can't encompass all of it, right? Because it's kind of like healing is always going on, but you're not purposefully doing it. It just comes up when it comes up. Yeah. I have a lot of imposter syndrome. Like those are the things that pops up for me. I was I said this earlier on a podcast. I was on a podcast a couple months ago, and the host was a doctor for NASA. So this person was a space doctor. Right. I didn't even know that was a real thing. I've seen that in movies. I didn't know that was a real person. So we're getting ready to do the interview, and I was thinking to myself, there must be another Kevin Palmieri that's supposed to be on this show, because it's not me. I'm not the one who's supposed to be here today. My practice for that is I look at the most recent and relevant proof. So the most recent and relevant proof is a few weeks before that, I was on a podcast and the host was getting their doctorate in psychology. I had the same moment of, I don't belong here. There's something's wrong. I'm the wrong person. But that went really well. Right. So I can assume, or I can hope, or I can surmise that this podcast is going to go well also. Anytime I have imposter syndrome, I try to do that. I try to look at the most recent proof and the most relevant proof of what I'm feeling. Is what I'm feeling correct? Is what I'm feeling incorrect? Is it just logic or emotion? I try to do that, but I don't know. I don't know if imposter syndrome is ever going to go away, because as we grow, to your point, you're in uncharted territory and you're experiencing things for the first time, and you know that's where a lot of the lessons are, but you don't really know what to expect. And I think imposter syndrome comes up in those moments. Yeah, definitely. And the fact to give yourself kudos to go through it anyway, and then come out on the other end and be like, oh, it wasn't so bad as my mind thought it was going to be, right? Yeah. And then, because I've had that. I've had an amazing guest myself who's a big person in mindfulness, who has all these doctorates and has done everything under the sun, that I felt the same way. I'm like, oh, who am I to interview this person? Do I have the capability, the knowledge? What if I sound dumb, right? And so what I did there, I actually, when I met with him, I told him, like, hey, when I did research on you, this is what came up for me, and I want to name it. I want to put it out there and not have it have power over me. Because a lot of the work that you did, and I research what you do, it makes sense. I understand it. Like, my mind is psyching me out. Yeah. right? Into believing these things. And I agree with you. I don't think it ever goes away, because most of our childhood is the opposite, right? And so as you're the adult, even in this space, been doing it, you have hundreds of episodes and coaching for years, that I love the brutal honesty of that, because it helps people give themselves permission to feel it and do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of been my story, is like, I don't know, I'm not special, or I don't have any like crazy talents, or I'm not the smartest human in the world. I've just tried to show up as consistently as I can and just get a little bit better. And every time I have an opportunity, I try to say, like, all right, best case scenario, worst case scenario, most likely, like, what's the best case? It goes great. What's the worst case? The worst case is, I don't know, I fall over in my chair and I get laughed at and everybody hates me. What's the most likely case? It's probably going to go just fine.
Right.
You know, but it's that interesting thing where it's almost harder in the beginning because you don't have the proof.
Right.
You don't have the momentum, right? That's a very challenging thing. Is it's harder to start the train than it is to continue the speed of the train. It's very hard to get something going, but once it's going, it doesn't take as much force to keep it going.
Yeah. Agreed. It's true. It's like going, like the same thing, like going to the gym. It's hard to first begin. But once you do, you're like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this?
Yeah. Or even if one of the things I did recently is I said, I'm just going to go to the gym and do 10 minutes of cardio. Just do 10 minutes. And then when I got to the gym, I was like, I'm already here. I might as well do like a workout too while I'm here. That you can trick yourself into momentum by just creating a little bit too.
Yes, agreed. Because that's what it is, playing tricks on the mind, because the mind is always playing tricks on us.
Yeah.
So it's only fair to give it back.
I agree. You're in control. You're in control, yes, definitely. What are some tricks that you do teach regarding the mind? Because I know you're big on the thought aspect, right? And so I wanted to get, like, what are some of the tricks that you, or tips that you give people that are practical in your daily life? One of the I like doing the whys. So like I don't know who wrote the book on it, but there's like the 7 whys. So if you have an answer to something, ask yourself why, then ask yourself why. It's really hard to do that alone, so you usually need somebody to do it with. But that's something, if you can find somebody that you trust and you can say, hey, I've been having this limiting belief, and you can go into the whys of that, that's drastically important. That's one thing. The other thing that I try to help people practice is, anytime somebody comes to me with a limiting belief, I tell them to cut a piece of paper in half, just draw a line down the center of a piece of paper, and then I want you to write 10 things to prove that limiting belief, and then 10 things to disprove that limiting belief. I had a client one time who said, I'm not smart enough to go back to school. And I was like, why? And we went into it and we had the conversation. And I said, I want you to make a list. Give me 10 reasons on one side and 10 reasons on the other. And I think she could only come up with like 2 reasons why not. And one of them was because my family told me I'm not smart enough. It's like, okay, that's a big reason, I understand.
Right.
But what else? And then it was just like, I haven't learned something new in a while. But the reasons she could were, I'm capable of learning, I've gone to school in the past, right? I'm really good at taking notes, I'm really good at studying, I'm consistent. It's like, it's a story. The story that you're telling yourself isn't your story. It's somebody else's story.
Yes.
So that, I really like the second one, because it forces you to actually write out your limiting beliefs, and then like, what are the roots under them? That's a really good practice. That's helped me a lot too, and that's helped a lot of my clients.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because it's with a story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
And the story we're telling ourselves is someone else's story about ourselves.
It's just the layers. It's like, I'm not smart enough because.
Yes.
Go ahead. Because my family told me I'm not. It's like, okay, I understand, and that must be, I empathize with the fact that they said that. But what do they know? They don't know. They don't know how smart you are. They're putting that on you. You went to school. You've been to school before. It's just, that. The other thing I like to tell people too is, failure isn't failure unless it's final and then you quit. So I had a client, it might have been the same client. She said, I have a test coming up and I'm afraid I'm going to fail. And I said, well, did you study? She said, I studied really, really hard and I feel okay about it. And I said, all right, cool. What happens if you fail? And she said, I just take the test again. I said, well, you can't fail then, can you? She's like, well, I have to pay $50. Like, I'll give you the $50 to take the test again. You're going to be fine. Just go take the test.
Yeah.
You're not going to fail. It's just maybe you don't get it right the first time. That's okay. Right. It's not a big deal. That's normal. That's the way it works for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And something that came up while you were saying that, a big thing that we do that we don't realize is word spell casting against ourselves. Right? We're like, I'm not going to pass this test. Well, you're not. You said you're not. So you're not. Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to now with the interrogation, right? You're helping them be reflective as to why you feel that way, right? And now they can change the wording of like, oh, the possibility of me passing is just as well as there me failing. It's just me. What is the belief behind when I go there? Yeah. Do I have the confidence? Do I believe in myself? Do I trust that I've studied enough and have the knowledge and apply it? I'm sure, like you said, like even the list, right? Having that and seeing it and releasing the stories and really diving within yourself and getting there and doing it, and then you pass. I'm sure the person passed. Versus like if you do believe and didn't have a Kevin in their life and they just went in with like, I'm gonna fail this, and you fail it because you believe that you did.
Yeah. Right.
And it's important to find these people in your either in your life or to hire someone to help you be that soundboard to, believe in yourself, because we all can do what we put our minds to, right? That saying, because the mind likes to think it's the master. And I wanted your feedback on that because you are so big on this. When the mind thinks it's the master, I wanted you to tell me, who do you think is the master if it's not the mind?
I think the mind is... I don't know if the mind is the master, but the mind is something that's very capable of pulling the strings. So you're usually going to have a conscious thought in between your initial reaction and your action. Right. So like you're in there, like you have the opportunity to influence it. I would say the mind is the rudder. The mind is the steering wheel. It's gonna go where you tell it to go. Yes. But there is something in there that's either spinning it to the left or spinning it to the right, or speeding it up or slowing it down. So I would say, the more aware you are as a human being, the more control you ultimately have. And then you're the one who says, I'm not going to get triggered by this. Right. And again, that's years and years and years and years and years, right? It takes time and practice. Absolutely. But even the interesting thing to wrap that story up, the client who didn't believe she could go to school, she went back and got a 3.9 GPA. She almost got a perfect score. It's like, it's not that I didn't teach her anything about school. Right. I just got her to go back. She did everything else by herself. It's that interesting thing that when you don't believe something is possible, you don't take action. And when you don't take action, you don't get feedback. When you don't get feedback, next time you look for recent and relevant proof, you don't have any. The recent and relevant proof you have is, last time I thought about trying, I didn't. I'll do that again. Yes. And that's just it. And you get stuck. Yeah.
Wow, that is beautiful. Well, congratulations to your client.
Yes.
And it is that, right? Creating these new experiences in the brain, right? That the neural pathways, new ones, right? To believe like, oh, I did do it and I did pass. So the next time I feel this way, I have that proof. Right. To go back and say, oh, I know when I falter and I get into this space, now I know how to get out of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important. You got to try new stuff. Even, and again, I know this is simple, but like, if you don't believe you can try it, try something that you believe you can do. Even if it's not the full thing, that's okay. Just try something a little bit more than you did yesterday, and you'll get some level of feedback that you didn't get before.
I love that, the feedback aspect, because that is what you're wanting, right? The brain is wanting information. Like when I output, what is the input, right? Yep. So it is as simple as that, but we complicate it, right? We just get all wrapped up in here and with the past experiences of it not working out before, but did we try it though? Right? Or was it someone that told me that it doesn't work out? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go. Right. So that's really beautiful. I love that work, and you're helping everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And being heart-centered is a big deal, because then you're able to be in this space and have the empathy and the compassion, and understand. Again, for you, is this alive in you? Like when you're helping clients, is there certain aspects or certain things that they come with you and ask you that you feel like, oh, it's funny because I'm tackling that in myself right now?
Not really when it comes to clients, but most of the stuff we talk about on the podcast is kind of like what we're going through. I want to be authentic, and I mean, if somebody comes to me with imposter syndrome, I got you. Like, I'll jam with you on that because that's something I experience all the time. Lack of belief, that doesn't happen as much, which is weird because I'm so used to it being that way, but I've worked on that a lot. I talk a lot about relationships, so it depends. Like if my wife and I are having something that I'm learning, I'll use it there, but more often than not, the podcast is like what we're going through. A lot of the coaching calls are the stuff that I've really, really, really been practicing, just because that's the stuff I feel most competent directly teaching someone anyway.
Yeah, beautiful. Is there anything else that you offered the community that I perhaps didn't touch on?
Oh, we have so much stuff that you could never touch on at all, I'm sure, but we have one-on-one coaching and group coaching and courses and live events and all that stuff, but I'd always just tell people to listen to the podcast first, because if you don't know us at a deep level, you're probably not going to trust us enough anyway to do that stuff. So just check out the podcast, and we talk a lot about what we talked about here today, Claudia.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that, how you're just like, hey, in order for us to work together, see how you feel when you're listening to us. Right? And that's a beautiful way to get to know you and see, and that's something big that I'm always pushing forward for anyone that's looking for someone. Like, make sure that you get to know them, see how do they feel, and then reach out. Where can people find you?
So just search Next Level University. It's on all the podcast platforms. It's on YouTube, all of our episodes. And then the best place to get a hold of me personally is probably Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. I do my own DM, so I will get back to you if you reach out.
Oh, I love that. So beautiful. I cannot thank you enough for joining me today. But before I let you go, is there something that you feel called to share that the listener may need to take with them today?
Ooh. There's a big difference between self-belief and self-worth. If you do not believe, if you don't believe in your own unique capabilities to build the castle, to build the home, to build the relationship, to build the business, that's probably a self-belief issue. If you do not believe that you belong there after you build it, or you are worthy of having the nice home, the castle, the business, the relationship, that's probably a self-worth issue. A lot of people get them mixed up. So I would just say explore that. Do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe you're capable of achieving the result? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe you are deserving of the result when you achieve it? I think that's a good little question to end on.
Yeah, agreed. That was perfect. That's a great way for them to think about, like, oh, that is perfect. I appreciate you.
Of course, I appreciate you.
This is so fun and great. I mean, I could keep you hostage and just talk to you all day. It's so soothing. Oh my God, there's a bumblebee outside my window. So I love that, because collaboration, as a hive. And we're doing that today. And Kevin, again, just my heart is full.
I appreciate
you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Claudia. You're a wonderful host, and you're the sweetest.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you to all the listeners for joining us today and expanding this amazing conversation. And if you're interested in working with Kevin, I will make sure to have all the links and all his access, his phone number, his address. No, I'm just kidding. And then you can reach out to him. So thank you all again. Remember that the breath is the secret. Thank you. And until next time.